Hi, everybody, and welcome back to yet another cracking edition of the Matt Brown Show. This is the Secrets of Fail series, where we are talking to business leaders, CEOs, and entrepreneurs all about their epic business blunders. And with us in the hot seat today is none other than Charlie Janes. He is the founder and CEO of FocalPoint Coaching. Welcome to the show, buddy.
So glad to be here. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. Well, you know what's coming, the elevator pitch first. So let's do that. So what exactly are you up to there at Focal Point?
So, Focal Point, I'm a growth and exit advisor. I help business owners grow legacy businesses. And by legacy, I basically mean that they live on and they're relevant after the founder steps aside. A legacy business tends to perform in the top 20th percentile of metrics like profitability or valuation metric. So basically, the type of clients I work with are companies that are really talented founders. They've already built their business to like 5 or 50 million, but they run into inevitable roadblocks as it relates to growth or building the team or just getting ready for the transition out. So I apply a series of tools and mechanisms that help them find their way through that process with greater success.
That's so cool. You also shared an interesting stat with me about the number of businesses that actually get sold. I'd love for you to share that.
Yeah, so I'm a certified exit planning advisor it's a certification body in Cleveland, Ohio. They run all these statistics. So only 17% of businesses put up for sale actually sell. And in family businesses, only 30% of those business transition to the next generation. And 75% of the time when businesses sell, the owner isn't happy with the terms, conditions, or price. So there's a lot that can be fixed.
Mm. I spoke to Bo Burlingham. He wrote the book Finish Big and
Mm-hmm.
Small Giants and all that kind of stuff. Just a really lovely guy. But he basically interesting in the context of exit. So I've sold a couple companies as well, and he interviewed 300 entrepreneurs who had sold their businesses. And another stat, which is quite interesting, but like 90%, like as in 9 out of 10 of the guys who sell businesses, go into depression. And the reason why they do, and which is the irony as well, why? Because liquidity event, you should be rich, right? You get to do what you want to do when you want to do it on your own terms, true freedom. But yet these guys go into depression because they've spent 10 years, 15 years building a business to scale 5, 50 million, 100 million, whatever. And then they sell it. And as a consequence of selling it, they actually lose their sense of meaning and purpose in what they do. And there's this gaping hole in their lives. And so one of the key takeaways from Bo was, if you are going to sell your business and you're working with a Focal Point as an example, and there's an opportunity to exit, you must know what you're going to do afterwards. So you're going to speak professionally, you're going to write a book, you're going to whatever, but not knowing and then selling is like the worst thing that you can do.
Oh, you couldn't be more right. So, our process is we baseline quickly with a calculation of the number that they need to live the life that they want for themselves and their family, a readiness score, what they're going to do with the rest of their life. And then, of course, the business valuation with a scorecard of what they can do to improve the value over time.
Amazing stuff. Sounds like a whole show for another series. But we don't have time for that. I think, Charlie, we got to get into the meat and the potatoes here. So let's do that now. What is your epic story of fail for our audience around the world today?
Well, there was a ton of them. I spent 30 years in Silicon Valley growing tech businesses. And in my last one, I was working for a conversational AI company, the company that mans the call centers. And that company had been locked in at only 700,000 in sales for about 3 years. And in the beginning, we had great success. We grew our revenues to about 7 million in the first year I was working there. And we came up with marquee clients like Ericsson and Intel and Stanley Black and Decker, and we answered all the phones in the country of South Africa for Anheuser-Busch, actually using AI. So all that was great, but as the pressure to grow mounted, we started making mistakes. And the result was we stopped paying attention to clients. And after the end of that first year, those 15 marquee clients went down to 3. And we ended up going through layoffs and going from a leader in the Forrester and the Gartner quadrants to really being lost for 3 years as a result of those missteps. So it was pretty painful.
Shit. So what were some of those I'm curious, like, why did that happen? Like, how do you get to that level and then things just completely implode? Like, how did you go from 15 marquee clients to 3?
Well, in this case, it was artificial intelligence. So a big thing with artificial intelligence systems is you have to train the systems. The implementations take a while. So whereas we were really good at getting the sale, we didn't pay enough attention to organizational transformation. That really takes a lot of psychology and a lot of stick-to-itiveness and really strong sponsors. And we took our eye off the ball there in the eye of growing with new clients.
Sure, that's so crazy. And so when you think about that whole experience, Charlie, what do you now take forward with you as like key lesson or insight into your business today?
I'm so glad to share this because I think it's universal across a lot of other failures I've had and maybe ones that the people in this audience have had. There are common phases in any business of learning, scaling, and eventually a decline. And the failure points that I most commonly see is that people don't know where they're at. So in the case of the company I was at, we were still in the learning curve. We hadn't been through a lot of the actual implementation and the actual success rate. So we made a mistake called the honeymoon trap. And the honeymoon trap is where you start expanding and investing in the business before you have a repeatable sales model. And in that case, we essentially became congested. We couldn't process all the work that we had, and our customers became dissatisfied with us, and we became irrelevant for a period of time.
Mm. So, Charlie, if you could go back in time in the Matt Brown Show time machine.
Oh, that's great.
And do something, or do something differently. What would you do differently, and why?
So most importantly, there are common frameworks of understanding where you're at. So understanding where you are in a growth or a product cycle is super important. In our case, we didn't have a good macro plan. We had a plan for growing sales. We were really quite good at that, but we didn't have an overall plan on how we were going to grow our customers and what measures of success are. So if I were to go back, one, I would set expectations with clients about the learning cycle of an artificial intelligence voice system to really from where they go from being there to being spectacular. The other thing that I would have done is I would have done more to set the expectations with the investors. They saw our early success and they said, this is going to be easy. Let's go. As a matter of fact, what they basically did is they let me go as the head of sales, and they brought in a VP of sales who had run $1 billion call center because they just thought they were ready to scale. But she was gone 4 months later because the customers started leaving. So I think this idea of planning and knowing where you're at is critical.
Mm. And I think also knowing when to sell, right? You know what I mean? Like that for me is a key one. Like I wrote about this in this book coming out this month called Secrets of Fail, and based on interviews with guys who are doing like $10 billion in aggregate companies and stuff. And so I thought, well, the book wouldn't really be authentic if I didn't put my own fuck up into the book. So I did, and it was basically how my previous company also scaling, and also didn't really know what stage we were at. So just like, I don't care, the revenues are doubling every year for 3 years. So I was like, sweet. And my mentor said to me, and then at that same time, I had the opportunity to come to the States. And I went to my mentor and I said to him, what should I do? And he was like, sell. And I'm like, I'm not selling. You're crazy. We're doubling revenues every year for 3 years. We scale this thing to international markets. We're going to take over the fucking world, baby. And then, unfortunately, COVID happened, and a number of other things factored, which you'll all read about in the book. But I lost that opportunity to sell, and I've seen this happen time and time again. I spoke to Peter Duncan, CEO of Microseismic, also massive company, oil fracking technology stuff. Super niche, scaled massively, IPO, PE, the whole thing, didn't sell. and lost that opportunity. So that for me is like a big one.
Well, Matt, that could be a whole show in itself. But the thing I want to throw out there is knowing the timing is an impossibility. There's so many external, internal factors, including then there's the 5 Ds: death, divorce, disability, disasters, things that most people put their business up at the wrong time. So one piece of advice is have your business packaged and continuously being evaluate whether you want to grow or sell every 90 days. But having your accounting right, running your business in that kind of cycles makes it so that when you get an unexpected offer, you don't have to just negotiate on that offer. You can create a bid situation if you've got a broker set up. So again, something to talk about another time, but there are processes that can improve your odds.
Yeah, I love what you say there. Like, I always think you must build it to sell it. So not like you shouldn't think about only exiting, but you should, structure your business and think about, well, if the opportunity came along, do I need to take a year to then redo all my accounting, redo the structure of the business, like redo, because it's not something that you do in a week. It's like it can take a year depending on how big the company is. And then you have to allocate resources to that. And then, like, is an acquirer going to wait for a year if it's a PE firm? You know what I'm saying? And they're looking at 5 other options or 10 other options, and then you're just not ready to sell. And I think that's one of the key things for me I think about, which is, well, what am I not doing now that in even systems, like as an example, what systems do I need to design and build now so that in 3 years' time, you know, we have this amazing story that an acquirer will really love.
No, that's exactly it. And there's a package system, a book called from John Warlow called Built to Sell,
Yeah.
and a value builder system, which I license. And it basically promotes what you're talking about is building the systems, building the team so that your company is an acquirer actually values the work that you've done. The alternative is living in an ugly house. You know, those people that fix up their house the week they want to sell it? You might as well fix up the house and love it for the 3 years before you sell it. Same with your business.
Touche, my man, touche. So, Charlie, what is your advice to CEOs, entrepreneurs out there in terms of the importance of failing or failure in becoming successful in business?
Well, I'm going to say I'm going to stick with this idea of alignment. This idea of making sure that you're always aligning your strategy with your customers, your company, your employees, and your projects. Most of us go off the rail when we don't achieve alignment. So the bigger question is then, well, how do I get alignment? So I always recommend that you have a one-page strategic plan. Many of you out there are probably big proponents of the Rockefeller method. That's where the one-page strategic plan came from. Using a business cadence process, something like maybe EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, to have your cadence of your meetings. Absolutely pay attention to your values. That sounds like a touchy-feely thing, but values are the principles that the people that work in your business use to make decisions when you're not there. And it's also the principles that your customers use to choose to whether to continue to do business with you. And that falls into your intangible capital when a buyer is looking to acquire your business. So it pays attention. It really makes it worthwhile to pay attention to the values. And the last thing, since we like to throw out tools and things, is in a lot of my implementations, I implement tools to align the strategic plan with the goal setting, the priorities of the rocks that we usually say in the cadence. There's a whole bunch of brands out there, but I happen to use Align Technologies. And that is a great way to hold your employees accountable and keep them aligned to what you're doing in a proactive way that's not onerous, that actually energizes them rather than makes them feel like you're looking over their shoulder.
Hmm. Very interesting, man. Charlie, very quickly, what about books, tools, and resources you recommend?
Well, my favorite coach and my favorite podcast is Focus on This with Michael Hyatt or the Business Accelerator. Lots of good things for entrepreneurs like all of us on time management, leadership, communication. I also like Business Made Simple. by Donald Miller. He's the same guy that did Story Build, the Story Brand, How to Tell Your Story. So those are great books and resources for you.
Beautiful stuff. Charlie, I feel like there is another show here, but that does conclude your time in the hot seat, mate. I appreciate you for coming on the show and lending your perspective and being courageous as a result of that. Yeah, man. I think what you're doing is great. When I get to $5 million a year, I'll give you a call for sure. But thank you for being on the show.
Hey, I appreciate it. It was great talking to you.
Everybody else, we'll see you again soon. Cheers.